Yeah. Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Temple City Council for Thursday, April 6th, 2017. Please rise as Renee Flores, Deputy City Secretary, leads us in the invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Emma Whitley.
If you would bow your heads and close your eyes with me. So, dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just want to thank you for another day. We thank you for being with our city and ask that you continue to keep watch over us, especially our law enforcement, fire department, EMS, and military services. Lord, guide us as we're gathered here today to make the right decisions that are pleasing to you and that are the best for our city. We also want to thank you for our city manager, Jonathan, who has served the city for many years. And Lord, we ask that you be with him as he goes into this new chapter of retirement, that you just bless his life to the fullest and allow him to have great moments with his family and loved ones. Lord, we thank you for Jonathan. We pray blessings over our new city manager as well. And Lord, we thank you and we love you. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Emma, you can't go anywhere yet because this is don't. It's not a threat or anything. It's a good thing. No, it is. You're at Temple High School. You're in the band. It always means so much to us to have the young people of our community come and participate in city government, and we're just very happy that you're here, and I will turn it over to Bryn Myers, who has a special presentation for you.
Thank you, Mayor. Emma is a very special guest with us tonight. She's actually the granddaughter of the city manager's office very own Lois Whitley. So we're really excited to have her. She's recently moved to Temple, and she is not only is she a member of the band, but she's the newest member of the Temple Wildcat Band. She plays the French horn, correct? So we're excited that she's here with us. A few weeks ago, we had the pleasure of having Emma stop by the office, and we commissioned her to do some artwork for us. So for those of you who have seen our conference room upstairs, you know that a few months ago we did some painting and some furniture switch up, and we put up a new glass whiteboard or dry erase board rather. And it's been up for several months, and no one has been willing to touch it because it's so pretty and pristine. No one would draw on it or use it. So we told Emma, hey, you need to put up some artwork on this thing so people will know that that you can use it. So she did an amazing job of drawing this great artwork all over it. I know all of council has seen it. We've gotten compliments on it from council members, from board members, from CEOs that have come in for meetings. So we really appreciate it. And it was successful because just a few days after she did that, one of our staff members decided, oh, hey, I'm going to use that board too. So it was successful in getting us to start using it. So because of her work for the city manager's office, we feel like she deserves an official certificate of awesome from the city of Temple.
Thank you, Emma. We were all the city council was also worried that the staff had been spending their days coloring on the board. That we were very relieved to know that it was you, and your grandmother Lois takes care of all of us, and she's always the person that we can rely on when we call the city manager's office. So thank you for being here. Now is the opportunity for public comments. Anyone wishing to address the council on any matter may do so by signing up prior to this meeting. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. No discussion or final action will be taken by the City Council. I know a lot of folks have signed up for item 6 on the agenda. You'll have the opportunity to speak during the public hearing. So if you would like to, if you'd like to pass during the public comment section, you can speak at the public hearing, or if you'd like to speak at both, you're welcome to do that as well. But you'll have 2 times to speak should you wish to have those. Mr. Tex Burrows.
Pass.
All right. Dr. John Shookman. Larry Alice. John Shanaville. I'm sorry, forgive me. All right. Tim Pastor.
I'd like to, if I can show a photo during the opening.
It might, yeah, you can speak now or you can speak then and show your photo at either time, so.
I'll get 2 times to do it.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
Then I'll pass.
Okay. No, I mean, you'll get 1 time then if you pass your time now, but we'll still have the benefit of seeing the photo.
Okay, so I'll be able to do it twice if I pass right now, or then?
No. Why don't you go up now and talk, and then you can talk later if you want to. That might.
I have more photos, that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's fine.
So exhibit C. Okay, Tim Pastor, 5904 Fawn Meadows Drive, Temple, Texas. Thank you for your time and being here and listening to something I feel is very important for Temple and for the residents in my area and future residents, and that is about parks. In this photo, the area that's highlighted, that's outlined in yellow, this is part of the south side of Temple, by the way. And there's a large development going in. That red triangle is Legacy Ranch, which they've already broken ground on this. That's 104 lots. That's how large it is. So my concern for this area in general is there's no parks, and Legacy Ranch doesn't seem to be putting in any parks in their plat that I know of. Plus, the city of Temple has a trail, the abandoned railroad track, Georgia Pacific Railroad track, that they're planning on sometime in the near future, turning that into a trail. This would be a great opportunity for the city of Temple to put in a park where it's a little green triangle next to inside the large area with no parks near the railroad track, is where I think would be a great opportunity for the city not to pass up. If they pass up on this, it's gone forever, because there is a developer that wants to develop this lot, and they have more of that triangle. They have more of the lot. This little triangle is just a smaller area of what they want to develop. I feel that it's doable for the city and it's doable for the developer. I always want property owners to have their rights, just like me. And putting in this park will also serve as a trail rest stop for the larger park over to the east side. It's a very large park to the east side, but that's a few miles away. That's how small this map is. This will connect. If they can put a park right in here and they put in this future trail, this will connect these parks, and it'll also, most importantly, connect the new larger development called Legacy Ranch that I think everybody here on the council knows about. That'll be going in. This will help benefit so much to the area residents, to future residents like Legacy Ranch, and it will help people decide if they want to move into this area that'll have this stuff already developed.
Mr. Pastor, I'll need to cut you off because your 3 minutes are up for this portion, but we look forward to part 2 shortly. Rebecca Burrow. Mr. J.D. Zepner.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, city entities, citizens, and residents. Good evening. I'm here tonight, like I'm always here, talking about signs. back in November, I passed y'all a few pictures, but I didn't talk about it, but y'all seen it, was of the sign at the Temple Daily Telegram, "Do Not Enter" sign. Well, I passed that around here because in November the 5th to November the 24th, the Temple paper decided not to give me my paper, send me my paper, because I spoke out like I always do, outspoken and opinionated, as the newspaper called me 4 years ago when I was running for council. And so anyway, I gave it to the news guy here, take back. Finally, I got my paper back. But I missed all the political season because they're a political paper, so they denied me my political rights. But anyway, I can't do much about it because I'm just a poor white boy, live on the black side of the tracks. But I know one thing I could do. I'm handing this picture to the secretary here to show y'all how bad this sign really is. It needs to be replaced because it's endangering the citizens' lives of our community, plus the citizens and the residents and the people that's going to be coming down to the Santa Fe Depot Plaza thing y'all be working on. So anyway, I wish y'all would have the telegram to replace this sign. And like I said, that's that. How many more minutes I got, sir?
Can I stall while I tell you? No, you've got about
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have about a minute left.
Okay, another thing, back in October again, Mr. Chandler, he did a deal on the signs on the meat market on the Frontage Road and West Avenue D. Well, I noticed in his presentation, I noticed some political signs of the sheriff that was still up. Well, during the storms and the winds, knocked one of the signs down, but there's still one sign left. I wish y'all would have the sheriff remove his political sign because he's already in office. And here's the pictures on that, Secretary. Thank you very much, Council. I'm here to look for the safety of our citizens, you know, and the well-being of our citizens. That's the only purpose I am here for. Thank you.
There are days that I wish the telegram wouldn't deliver to my house.
I'll tell you what, we could say.
Yeah. Pat Langen. All right. And now is item 3 and 4, an opportunity for 2 proclamations. National Social Work Month, which was actually in March. Is Richard Stillman here? Well, I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway because we missed it last month, and it always is a nice thing to remember our social workers that work in the community. And if you don't mind, I'll just stay seated since there's no one actually in front of me. But whereas the primary mission of the social work profession is to enhance well-being and help meet the basic needs of all people, especially the most vulnerable in society. Whereas social workers embody this year's Social Work Month theme, Social Workers Stand Up, by serving, advocating for, and empowering millions of Americans each day. Whereas social workers embody the theme of this year's World Social Work Day by promoting community and environmental sustainability and working with individuals, organizations, and local and federal government to improve communities and protect the environment. Whereas social workers have been behind and continue to advocate for legislation and policies that reduce racial discord, including renewal of the Voting Rights Act, the Violence Against Women's Act, the Civil Rights Act, the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, workplace safety, and Social Security benefits. And whereas social workers are the largest group of mental health care providers in the United States, and work daily to help people overcome substance abuse disorders and mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety. Social workers deploy across the United States and the world and helping people overcome earthquakes, floods, wars, and other disasters and return to peace and prosperity. Now therefore I, Daniel A. Dunn, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, in recognition of the numerous contributions made by America's social workers, hereby proclaim March 2017 as National Social Work Month in the City of Temple. And I call upon all citizens to join with the National Association of Social Workers in celebration and support of the social work profession. In testimony whereof, I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this the 6th day of April 2017. And we'll make sure that the folks that were here last meeting will get this. And now, if we have a proclamation on Fair Housing Month, and if Beth Correa and Larry Everett are here. Is Larry here? Oh, there he is. I'll send the proclamation giving. Whereas the Governor of Texas has designated the Central Texas Council of Governments areas as State Planning Region number 23. Whereas the Central Texas Council of Governments is organized in accordance with Section 391 of the Local Government Code and encompasses the region of Bell, Coryell, Hamilton, Lampasas, Milam, Mills, and San Saba counties. Whereas the Central Texas Council of Governments is a recipient of Texas Community Development Block Grant Program funds and is required to perform a well-publicized activity to further fair housing opportunity within the 7-county region before final reimbursement under the current contract's expiration on August 31st, 2017. Whereas the Fair Housing Act of 1968 prohibits discrimination in the sale, rental, and financing of dwellings based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And whereas each April we come together as a community and a nation to celebrate the anniversary of the passing of the Fair Housing Act and recommit to that goal which inspired us to eliminate housing discrimination and create equal opportunity in every community. Now therefore I, Daniel A. Dunn, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2017 as Fair Housing Month, and do urge all citizens to wholeheartedly recognize the importance of fair housing for everyone. In testimony whereof, I witness my hand and the seal of the City of Temple, Texas, this the 6th day of April 2017. And I'll hand this to you. And would y'all like to say anything? Have any fair housing comments?
CITCOG would like to thank the City of Temple for proclaiming April as Fair Housing Month.
Absolutely. Thank y'all for being here. Thanks, ma'am. Next up is the consent agenda. All items listed under this section, the consent agenda, are considered to be routine by the City Council and may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member and will be considered separately. Council, this is items 5A through 5R. I know that we're going to pull 5H for reading. Is there anything else that you'd like to pull from the consent agenda? If not, I will entertain a motion on items 5A through R minus 5H.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Mayor Pro Tem Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Pilkington?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 5H, consider adopting a resolution authorizing the purchase of 11 vehicles from various vendors in the amount of $274,380.17. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. On our consent agenda, as you just said, we had 11 vehicles, and they were totaling about just a little under $275,000 for 7 independent bids. Our recommendation was to give Caldwell Country the 4 vehicles, Mack Hayek 5 vehicles, and Silsby Ford 2 vehicles. But we just found out on April 4th of this week that Silsby Ford was not able to honor their bid for a 3/4-ton light-duty extended cab pickup. So our revised recommendation is to table the 2 vehicle bids that were recommended for award to Silsby and deem them an irresponsible bidder. and authorize the vehicle purchase as presented in the amount of $213,687 to Caldwell Country Ford for 4 vehicles and Mack Hike Dodge for 5 vehicles. And you should have a motion in front of you, but if you have any questions.
Entertain a motion on item 5H, and there is, once again, motion language in front of you.
I move to approve item 5H 1 through 3 and 6 through 7 as presented by staff in the amount of $213,687, and to table item 5H numbers 4 and 5.
Second.
Motion is second. Madam Secretary.
Mayor Pro Tem Cloud? Aye. Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Pilkington?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales? Mayor Dunn?
Aye. And if the audience will indulge us, we're going to go, because item 6 will probably take longer than the rest of the items combined. I'm going to move to item 7, first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning from agricultural zoning district to general retail zoning district on 3.91 acres, Lot 1, Block 1, Fernandez Addition, located at 4030 Hilliard Road, Temple, Texas. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Just to orient with the location of the property, again, it's shown by the hatched area along Hilliard and just north of the location of the intersection with West Adams Avenue. Again, this is a rezoning for 3.9 acres, and the rezoning is not being triggered by any specific development being considered at this time. In terms of the zoning, again, the current zoning is agricultural, and it does border several other properties that are have the agricultural zoning designation, but there is general retail that is being established along Hilliard, and most recently, that you may recall, the property directly across the street was before you and approved for general retail under the same circumstances. In terms of the future land use map, the underlying designation is suburban commercial, which does support the office retail service zoning designations. Both water and sewer are available to the subject property. There's no anticipated improvements along Hilliard Road, and there is an existing sidewalk which meets the citywide spine trail definitions, the oversized, and it is on the east side of Hilliard. Just some photographs of the property and the surrounding area. Again, this is looking at the subject property. There is an existing single-family residence currently on that property. To the north, again, there are scattered single-family residential uses. To the south, again, looking toward the intersection with Hilliard and West Adams, primarily there are developing retail and service uses, but still room for development as the corridor transitions. There is an existing single-family residence directly adjacent to the property to the south. And to the west is undeveloped, but further to the west there are some scattered residential uses. And again, the property that I had indicated earlier, which within the last year had received rezoning to general retail, looking directly across from the subject property. So a number of uses that are permitted by right and through a conditional use permit process that are allowed within the general retail. And a comparison between the development standards, the main takeaway from this table is the reduced front setback from the agricultural designation to the reduced front yard setback, and side and rear setbacks that would be triggered with buffering and screening requirements with non-residential uses adjacent to a residential use or zoning district. And that buffering and screening would consist of either the buffering through landscape buffering, being a 5-gallon plant with a planted height of 6 feet on 36-inch center, or a solid wall or fence being of 6 to 8 feet in height. 8 notices were sent out as part of the notification to property owners. 3 were received in agreement, and none were received in disagreement. In terms of compliance, the request does comply with the 4 criteria: the future land use map, surrounding uses and zoning, availability of public facilities, and a thoroughfare plan. Staff is recommending approval of the request from agricultural to general retail. And the Planning and Zoning Commission, at their March 6th meeting, did vote 6-0 to approve the rezoning per staff's recommendation. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available should you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Council, any questions? All right. This time I'll open the public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being no one wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on the first reading of item 7.
Motion to approve item 7 is read. Second.
A motion and a second, Madam Secretary.
Mayor Pro Tem Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Pilkington?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales? Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 8, first reading in a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning from agricultural zoning district to single-family 3, general retail and office 2 zoning districts on 81.173 acres situated in the B. Streckner Survey, abstract number 746, Bell County, Texas, located at 3131 Lower Troy Road. Ms. Barrett.
Good evening, Mayor Dunn, City Council. This item is to discuss our request zoning from the ag to 3 zoning districts that are illustrated on the screen before you. They're requesting O2 along Lower Troy Road, SF3 in the middle portion, and GR General Retail along Dodgen Loop. The duplex use is requested for the O2, which is allowed in the O2 zoning, with the single-family uses within the interior property and, of course, retail along the loop. The proposed zoning does allow most residential uses in O2, except for manufactured homes. There are existing apartment complexes to the north and the south of this site, and it is in compliance with our zoning map. And the future land use map, it is suburban commercial and suburban residential in nature, and the requested Office 2 district does not comply, but it is compatible with the surrounding uses. The single-family 3 district doesn't comply due to its density, but it is compatible with surrounding uses of property, and the general retail district complies in the upper corner, which is designated as suburban commercial, but the majority of that zone would be in the suburban residential designation. So it's non-compliant. On the thoroughfare map, the Dodgen Loop is, of course, an expressway, and it is considered appropriate for general retail use. Lower Troy Road is designated on our thoroughfare plan as a minor arterial, which should be appropriate for office uses and multifamily. However, the pavement of the existing roadway does appear to be less than 25 feet in width, and for that reason, staff has determined that it is partially compliant with the thoroughfare plan. Existing water and sewer are in adjacent I should say nearby properties, but not adjacent properties. There are existing water lines in the Bel Air North subdivision and along East Young Road and Gun Club Road, and there are sewer lines in the Bel Air North subdivision. These are considered older lines, the ones that are nearest to this tract. However, Public Works has weighed in on some conditions and made comments about the proximity to both water and sewer lines that may be reached by the developer. The connection for the wastewater would need to be made to a larger diameter portion of the Bel Air relief sewer, and for the water system, they would need to tie into an 8-inch water main that is to the south of the site. Here's a map that shows the expanded utility view, that they do have the capacity, the lines do have the capacity to serve the developed area that the developer will need to extend them. Some photographs of the site. The top photograph is along Lower Troy Road, looking into the site. As it currently existed, is vacant and agricultural. And at the lower portion of the slide, you can see along the Dodge and Loop that the site is rural in nature. Again, on the left-hand side and along Lower Troy Road, you can see the wooded and field kind of characteristics of the site. And then to the north is HK Dodge and Loop on the right-hand side of the screen. Looking east towards the Dodge and Loop is this view. And then the surrounding properties to the west along Lower Troy Road are two views that show rural character. And you can also see the condition and what the roadway currently looks like. To the south, looking to across Lower Troy Road, there are some rural and agricultural uses, and then towards the from the HK Dodge and Loop side as well. For land uses, the Office 2, as previously stated, it does have a number of residential uses, of which one of those is considered the duplex use that they are requesting. There are several retail and office uses as well. SF3 or single family 3 has, of course, single family residence, detached and industrialized housing, and no commercial uses. And then the general retail has a number of commercial uses, in addition to a number of other, recreational uses as well. For the development standards, the proposed SF3, the minimum lot size is 4,000 square feet. Currently in the ag zoning, it's 1 acre, with corresponding differences in the minimum lot width of 40 feet versus 100 in ag, and the lot depth of 100 feet in SF3, and currently in agriculture it's 150. The front setbacks are much less as well. Rear setback is the same in both districts. For a comparison of the O2 and GR uses, the minimum lot size for O2 is 6,000 square feet, and for GR, it isn't applicable. Additionally, the minimum lot width and depth for O2 are, as stated in general retail, is not lined out. Front setback is 25 feet for O2, unless the height is expanded, and then it does increase. And for general retail, it would be 15 feet. The compliance summary for the future land use plan, staff does not find that it is compliant with the future land use plan as shown. It is compatible with the surrounding uses and zoning. However, public facilities are partially available, and it is partially compliant with the thoroughfare plan. notification was sent out to area residents surrounding the property. There are 18 notices were mailed. 1 was received in agreement, and 2 were received in disagreement. It was published in the newspaper on February 23rd. Staff is recommending approval of the request for the rezoning from Ag zoning agricultural district to single family 3, office 2, and general retail. At their March 6th meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-0 to approve the rezoning per staff's recommendation. Any questions or discussion?
I could ask you a question, because over the years I've actually had some questions from folks that live along that the closer part of Lower Troy Road by Young, and they have asked about a closer water line. When this gets moved over, will they have the ability, certainly at their cost, but to tie into that larger water line?
It would presumably be a public line, and if normally I think there are agreements to upsize it, depending on when you say would they be able to. If you're talking about one house or somebody
right,
with
I'm
some,
talking about maybe 2 or 3, or on the smaller pieces, on the smaller tracts of land. Just that's been a difficult thing for a while, is getting water, and it's not related to this, but I was just asking a question because.
To my understanding, of course, it's not in my job description as far as having the water system under. I guess my understanding is that it would be available. So it was just the general area. The developer at platting would have to bring the water into the area, and it would have to come from further away. Then these lines are showing right almost directly across the road from the subject property. They would need to come from where the lines are large enough down in this area. Mr. Wilson and I discussed that earlier today. So if they brought the water to the property in order to develop it, presumably those would be public lines. And
Right. Thank you.
Depending on the number of lots that are platted in that area, would there be a requirement to widen Lower Troy? Because that's already a fairly, and you mentioned in your presentation, that's already a fairly thin road. I bet it's 20 feet. And with, that kind of increase in traffic, I think that a wider road would definitely be needed there. Because with the mobile home park, and then you've already got some other duplexes there. That's my neighborhood, and there's already a lot of traffic coming up East Young and up Zenith getting to 3rd. There's a lot of traffic going out to the loop. Whose responsibility would it be to widen that road, if anybody's?
the city at platting stage does not have a TIA or a transportation study requirement. Presumably that could be one required of the developer. And I know that we do internally as well.
If I may, Brian Chandler, Planning Director, that, we don't have perimeter street fees that used to pay for improvements associated with a specific development. And so essentially, at the platting stage, as Lynn said, they would be required to dedicate the appropriate amount of right-of-way for their portion, but would not be required to make any improvements to the road. Essentially, it's really puts the burden on capital improvement program and adjusting priorities as established by City Council based on the need.
Could there be a requirement that the city widen that road, like a planned development type of situation prior to building?
Well, if, right now, of course, the request does not include a planned development district. Planned development district does provide the opportunity to add enforceable conditions because, as you know, base zoning does not provide that opportunity. So if that were something to be considered, then, and it's implementable, then certainly, we'd follow your lead.
Can that be done at the time of plating, or does it have to be done now?
Well,
prior to approval of zoning?
We could work with you all and the applicant, in terms of the timing of it. Certainly the plating stage is when that normally would be addressed, but the infrastructure improvements are done prior to permitting, typically after plating, between plating and permitting. So, but that's the timing of that. Once again, we could follow council's lead and work with the developer, but once again, that would require a planned development district.
I would just add to that. I mean, it would be difficult, if I understand your question, to require the developer to improve that entire road, to do that. So we, under our ordinance currently, we do not, as Brian said, we don't require perimeter street fees, but we could require additional right-of-way. If the council is concerned about the capacity of that road, if you want to direct the staff at some point to look at adding that to the TCIP or some other program at the time of your approval, you could do that. If you approve this subdivision, you're looking at the infrastructure basically the way it is, with the possible exception of, during the planning process, getting some additional right-of-way and asking, is that infrastructure sufficient for that increased development and the traffic that it will generate?
Questions for Brian? Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Council, any other questions? All right, this item is scheduled for a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. BJ Little, 301 North 3rd Street in Temple. Work for Turley Associates. We're representing the developers. Want to specifically answer some of your questions. We didn't present, obviously, a site plan because we didn't come forward with a plan development, but something that would help you in this case, hopefully. Part of the plan, we've already gone through and laid some of this out. We have a collector street that's designed to handle more of the traffic through here that's going to run from Lower Troy Road all the way to the loop. Currently, we don't have any houses planned to front that street, so it's going to allow for a better traffic flow that's going to drive the traffic to the loop. We understand that Lower Troy currently isn't really wide enough, and we would dedicate the amount of right-of-way that's necessary to help facilitate the improvements of that road in the future. But we're anticipating that everything's going to be driven towards the loop. We're, I think, just a mile or two south of Buc-ee's in the interstate, so I think that's going to be the preferred route that majority of these homeowners would take.
Depends on where they're going.
It does. It depends on where they're going.
I mean, if they're going downtown, I mean, again, that's my neighborhood, and in the morning or in the evening, especially in the morning, people going out Zenith, out Zenith to 3rd, to either cross over to the industrial park or to go into the downtown area. It's we've had traffic backed up at that light there at Zenith and 3rd for years.
I understand. We're trying to look at it and do the best we can with the plan.
I understand.
Try to help as much as possible, because we understand also one of the developers takes that road going home towards Troy. He lives in Troy, and Lower Troy doesn't have any access until you get all the way up into Troy. So
Right.
This would be another cross access to help bring some of the traffic off of there, drive them more towards the loop, hit the interstate, or come south from there. So if you have any other questions, I'll be more than willing to help answer them.
We're okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? You live on the other side of town.
Yeah, I use that road. My name is Sandra Creech. I live at 504 Paseo del Plata, and he's right on the other side of town. But I use that loop a lot. I'm on that road at least every other day going onto the north side of Temple from the south side of town. And I am concerned if you're driving traffic to the loop, is the loop sufficient to handle the increased traffic? And that's something the city needs to consider, widening or doing what we did on the west side of the loop, doing to the east side of the loop, and possibly increase the possibility of greater retail opportunities in the east side of Temple, as well as take some of the burden off of I-35 by giving people a route to get to the other side of town. My thoughts.
J.D. Sepner. I was hearing her saying that there was like an 8-inch sewer line and it has to be upgraded to a 12-inch sewer line. Right down the loop, I guess about maybe 4 miles, is the Dozer treatment plant. For future development on this loop, would be a good idea to run a new sewer line from that part of the loop all the way down side of the loop to the Dozer treatment center. If not, if all that goes to the old system that's already there, are we going to have to update the lift stations and stuff to bring it to Dozer's treatment plant? Because all of them, that system, that neighborhood was about 20 years old now. And I was wondering if the sewer system that comes between there and Dozer is more older, 50 to 60, 80 years old. I was going to wonder if it's going to be updated all the way to the 12-inch system or whatever type the city has planned.
I think we'll be okay with that.
Okay, I just wondered, I just brought that up, you know, because I'm looking at future growth of the eastern loop, you know.
Sure.
But I just thought I'd bring that attention.
Yeah,
Thank y'all.
Thank you. And again, this is just a zoning change, so a lot of this, if this moves forward, we can deal with during the plating process. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this matter that hasn't spoken? All right, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Council, any further comment? All right, I'll entertain a motion on item 8.
Make a motion for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second, Madam Secretary.
Mayor Pro Tem Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Pilkington?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales? Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 9, first reading and a public hearing. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing amendments to the tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 1 financing and project plans to align with the 2022 master plan for the years 2017 through 2019. Ms. Bernard.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This proposed amendment, it allocates funding for the 4 projects. Those 4 projects are for the design and construction of a corporate airport hangar, design and construction of the extension of T-Med South 1st Street, additional funding for the construction of Crossroads Park at Pepper Creek Trail, and design and construction of a parking lot for the new Pepper Creek Trail. The funding for these projects were provided through a combination of state and federal grants, contribution from a tenant for upgrades to the corporate hangar, deletion of the airport taxiway improvements that were in a future year that are no longer needed. Also, we have a contractual commitment with Temple Independent School District for their participation in the reinvestment zone. We have aligned the funding for that, moved $5 million to FY 2018, transferred project funding between bond and cash for Research Parkway, and also reduced funding allocated in future years for the construction of Veterans Memorial Boulevard. And again, the summary of the proposed amendment, the net change in projects for FY 2017 is a reduction or increase of 2.3 million. FY 2018 was the net change is 4,690,000, and then FY 2019 was a reduction of 2.5 million. Included in your council agenda packet is the detailed financing plan for the reinvestment zone through the life of the zone, project plans, and then master plan project funding. I'd be happy to entertain any questions related to the amendment.
Questions, council? There being no questions, at this time I'll open the public hearing on item 9. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being none, declare the public hearing closed. Council, your pleasure on the first reading of item 9.
Motion to approve item 9.
Second. Motion is second. Madam Secretary.
Mayor Pro Tem Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Pilkington?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn?
Aye. Item 10, a resolution. Consider adopting a resolution approving an appeal of standards to Section 6.7 of the Unified Development Code related to I-35 corridor overlay zoning district and freeway retail commercial sub-district requirements for landscaping, lighting, and architecture for a redeveloped car dealership, the new Garland Shelton BMW at 5420 Midway Drive. Ms. Barrett.
Again, this is for an appeal for the I-35 corridor overlay. It is a request to appeal Section 6.7 to redevelop an existing car dealership with upgraded landscaping, lighting, and architecture into a new Garland Shelton BMW. The location map is before you. It is in the retail, freeway retail commercial subdistrict. It is at the intersection of Midway Drive and the frontage road, and is currently a car dealership of a different sort, but will be redeveloped into a BMW. They are asking for a number of appeals, primarily to fit with the BMW corporate request for their dealerships to have a certain look, which is not compatible with necessarily with our I-35 standards. These are I believe 13 standards. We can go through them fairly quickly. They need to have 15% of the total site landscaped and with approved plants, and they're requesting an appeal of that. They are also required by code to have foundation plantings in front of the building, and of course the building is designed to be glass, which would prevent the foundation plantings would prevent you from seeing the display of the cars inside. There is a requirement for evergreen tree, certain percentage of the trees to be evergreens, and they're requesting that some of those trees be crepe myrtles and of other types. They've asked to use river rock, which is not an allowed type, instead of native grass beds and wildflowers, which code provides. They have asked for an appeal of the requirement to have berms. Again, they are wishing to display the building and the area for the vehicles rather than cover it up. So that the berm requirement would be one of their requests to waive it. Again, the screened parking that code requires, they're asking for an appeal of that as well. There is an entrance offset requirement in our code, and their proposed building does not have that. Additionally, we have what's called a tripartite design, which means that there is a defined base, middle, and top, and of course, an entire glass display does not fulfill that either. Additionally, the windows are required to be between 40 and 80%, and this would be exceed that. What is not glass, they're proposing to have be white rather than earth tone in color. And again, we have an additional 80% requirement on the glass, and it will exceed that. And also, they won't be landscaping the entire site, although it will be grass, and they do propose to extend the irrigated portion and the landscape portion into the TxDOT right-of-way, which TxDOT has approved. Their final request for an appeal is our 80,000 lumen per acre requirement that they also will exceed. This is an elevation showing the proposed architecture of the BMW dealership. The site plan, I apologize, it's really hard to read site plans on the screen. This is the overall site plan of the new building and the site as proposed. Some areas that are called out to bring your attention to are the landscape area in the TxDOT right-of-way, which is in the red circle in their entryway, and also some of the trees that they have proposed. Additionally, this shows the grass landscape in front of the car display, which would be in lieu of those foundation plantings that I spoke about earlier. This is a site of the building elevations for the dealership, showing the character of the proposed display area for the cars. BMW mandated to their dealers that they have a particular architecture style for their dealerships several years ago, and they've been implementing that nationwide. Here are some examples of those from Kansas City. The lower one is from Grapevine. You can see that they're basically glass boxes. And two examples from California as well. The existing site or the existing building there is the Nissan dealership. That building will be taken down, and the new BMW one will be put in its place with the Nissan cars, and several of the different dealerships are shuffling around as a result. This shows the existing site. Staff recommends the approval of the appeal, as the applicant has been closely working with staff on a compromise to coordinate the corporate requirements from BMW with what the I-35 corridor overlay requirements are generally to beautify the corridor, and just not specifically in this case. It is a substantial upgrade in applying the corridor requirements over what's currently on site. And a number of the requested exceptions are consistent with a group of proposed UDC code amendments that will be coming forward to P&Z later this month and to you in May. Any questions or discussion?
Mentioned the light.
They would be down lighting, sir. Yes, and it's almost impossible to meet the code requirements that we have currently for anyone. I think it's every appeal has indicated that lighting is a problem. Yes, it would be down lighting.
Reflectors to keep the.
It would be fully shielded on site, yes, sir.
further questions, I'll entertain a motion on item 10.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Motion is second, Madam Secretary.
Mayor Pro Tem Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Pilkington?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales?
Aye.
Mayor Dunn.
Aye. Now, item 6, second reading in a public hearing, consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning from the Neighborhood Services Zoning District to the Planned Development Neighborhood Services Zoning District and Site Development Plan on 3.5718 acres proposed for a non-residential subdivision for a mini-storage facility, which is a reduced scope from the original 7.35 acres request, situated on a portion of a one-lot, one-block RVOS addition located at 5785 South 31st Street, Temple, Texas. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And just as a reminder, this case is being heard after being tabled at the City Council meeting on March 2nd. And so second reading is scheduled for April 20th. Just a little bit of background, I guess first orienting you to the site. And the reason for the tabling was the applicant elected to reduce the scope of the site. And so you can see what the entire property included that was reviewed by Planning and Zoning Commission, and on March 2nd, this was the scope for 7.35 acres, and they've reduced it to 3.57, so approximately what's shown in the yellow. Of course, this is 31st Street on the west. You have the Georgetown Railroad right-of-way to the south, and then the Deerfield Estates neighborhood immediately to the south of the railroad right-of-way. Bentwood Professional Park is immediately to the west, with the Bentwood residential subdivision just beyond that. A reminder that this case has had 3 community meetings, 2 at Planning and Zoning Commission, 1 in December and 1 in February, and then a community meeting per P&Z's direction in January. And so a lot of the neighbors who are here and you'll hear from later have also been a part of those community meetings to provide input to the developer. And the developer is here as well for questions if you should have some. Also, many of the concerns that have come up during those public meetings were related to drainage. And just a reminder that based on P&Z's action and also the level of opposition, which I'll go into a little more detail later on, but your vote would require a supermajority or 4 affirmative votes to approve this. And so looking at site photos at the left, this is just looking at the site. This was several months ago during winter. Got other photos that are more current. And then to the right, this is an existing single-family dwelling just to the north of the property. And then this is a view with the railroad here to the right, but you can see the site in the background. You can see this giant oak tree, which is in the right-of-way and would not be impacted by the project. And then the picture on the right shows another view just of the railroad looking south, but also the Deerfield Estates neighborhood entrance immediately to the south of the proposed project. And then looking to the west, this is the Bentwood neighborhood, and then on the picture on the right is the Bentwood Professional Park at the entrance to that neighborhood. So some photos of the Georgetown Railroad, and the first round of photos were taken during the winter just to show the existing foliage and brush, and relative to the neighbors to the south, all of the brush is proposed to remain, and we'll talk about how the developer proposes to preserve a 20-foot landscape buffer and some of this buffering and screening for purposes of screening from the residential to the south as well. And so these are recent photos where you can see what that buffering and screening looks like at this time of year. And then the photo to the right, this is looking south at the corner of the site, and this is just another view looking towards the railroad, but this is the other side of that large oak tree in the right-of-way that wouldn't be impacted by this project. Other site photos on the left, this is just kind of looking more southeast, and then the photo on the right is looking more northeast, and so you can see where the site is labeled, and then the background, that's the area that is no longer part of the scope for development. So to compare site plans, and of course because this is a planned development district, the site plan and elevations would require substantial compliance if this project were approved. So on the left, this was the original project of 75,000 square feet and change, 2 different phases. On the right is the current scope, which consists of just over 49,000 square feet in just a single phase. And this is a perspective rendering provided by the applicant that reflects the elevations that I'll show you in a second that would be binding or would require substantial compliance attached to this ordinance if approved. But you can see the architectural elements that have been proposed and the landscaping along with that. The sidewalk as well. Sidewalk is required. This is a major arterial, and so they would have to build that, and there's a condition that staff would propose to ensure that the sidewalk is built prior to a certificate of occupancy being issued. And looking at the elevations, top elevations represent what was initially proposed, and based on the neighborhood meeting back in January, there were some input about the height, some concern about the height, particularly at the end cap kind of tower features. The applicant went back to the drawing board and lowered the elevations and also provided some hipped roofs that are more residential in character as well. So you can see the difference of those in terms of the height, but also just the more residential look. Overall landscape plan, the old one on the left, and then which represented 39% overall landscape area compared to the 5% that is required by code. The new landscape plan of the reduced scope proposes 29.8% landscape area, and part of that is removal of, essentially the proposal is to preserve the 20 feet of existing trees as a buffer, and rather than landscape that, just preserve it. And so that's actually removed from the calculation. And looking a little more closely at the landscape plan, you can see the type of landscaping that's proposed. This is 31st Street. And so what would be seen from 31st Street would consist of a variety of different drought-tolerant shrubs and crepe myrtles. And then in the entryway, more of the same with some red buds in there as well. So looking at the zoning map, once again, this is proposed for a planned development district, neighborhood services. The entire site right now is neighborhood services. So essentially what is proposed is to pull down the mini storage use from a commercial zoning district, and then having the landscape plan and site plan and elevations and all the other conditions to tie it to this project and not allow other uses in commercial. But still, neighborhood service uses would still be allowed. And so when you look at other zoning districts in the area, to the north, agricultural district, to the west, neighborhood services, actually a planned development district, neighborhood services for the Bentwood Professional Park, and to the south, Deerfield Estates is a planned development district, single family 1. Future land use map, all of this in red, including the proposed site. The comprehensive plan calls for this as auto-urban commercial, which allows for more intense retail uses and some commercial uses, and the trade-off being that it calls for a higher percentage of landscaping to kind of offset the more intense uses. And this proposal is for a commercial use with enhanced landscaping, and therefore staff is interpreting this as compliant with the future land use plan. And then to the north and west, actually the Bentwood Professional Park is also was also identified in the comprehensive plan as auto urban commercial, and then to the south is a state residential. Thoroughfare plan and trails plans. 31st Street is a major arterial. It certainly has adequate right-of-way. This project is compliant with that aspect. Trails master plan calls for citywide spine trails along South 31st Street. The sidewalk would comply with that. And then, of course, as has been referenced before, the Georgetown Railroad has been identified by the city as a proposed citywide spine trail, and it's a project that we continue to look at in terms of the feasibility and potential grant sources, et cetera. But anyway, we're working with legal on that aspect. And the proposal to preserve the 20-foot landscape buffer adjacent to the railroad would also provide any screening if that were ever converted to a trail, which we certainly hope it will be. Then it would still, the buffering and screening would still be there from the trail to this use. Sewer and water are available. You can see here on the map. Certainly, it's a fairly developed part of South 31st Street. So, in terms of compliance with the comprehensive plan aspects, compliant with the future land use plan, with the thoroughfare plan, with growth and development patterns. Goal in 4.1 of the comprehensive plan, trails and thoroughfare plan compliant, and then also compliant with Unified Development Code criteria for Plan Development District in Section 345. So looking at uses, I think it's important for you all to understand what could be built without this project, because once again, this Plan Development District, the site plans and elevations would require substantial compliance. So what could be built today under neighborhood services, and some uses would include just office, restaurant without a drive-through, a bank, which could include bank drive-through lanes, food or beverage sales store without fuel, so basically a convenience store without fuel pumps, and then just retail shops. And so taking some of those uses and comparing traffic counts, also I think it's important for council to understand the context of traffic at that location. Mini storage has a peak hour trip rate of basically 0.26 cars during a peak hour, and basically when you apply the 49,000 square feet to that, that's a 12 trips would be generated by this project in peak hour. And just compare that to some other neighborhood services uses, such as just general office with 1.55 peak hour trips, essentially seven times the level of traffic. Office, medical, or dental, 3.46. That'd be roughly 14 times the level of traffic. So an apples-to-apples comparison, which we're showing here in just in square feet of 49,000 square foot project versus 7,000 square feet of office, 3,400 square feet of medical or dental, a shopping center project of 2,400 square feet, convenience store, no pumps, 179 square feet. And then what's not on here is also restaurant without a drive-in, which the equivalent would be a 650 square foot restaurant of compared to generate 12 trips peak hour. All right, comparing UDC standards, just the existing neighborhood services, just our general standards, requires a front setback of 15 feet. The project proposes 25. Side setback of 10 feet in neighborhood services. They're proposing the 20 with the preservation of the landscape buffer. Rear setback, existing neighborhood services would require 0 rear setback because of it abutting the railroad. They're proposing 15 feet. Landscaping, 5% of the site. So if any one of those uses came in today, they would have to landscape 5%. They're proposing 29.8%. Buffering along the Georgetown Railroad would not be required. They're once again proposing a 20-foot wide preservation buffer. Masonry, facades, all visible facades would require 70%. All visible facades are proposed to be at 100%. Tree preservation, we don't have a tree preservation ordinance, but they're proposing to preserve the 20-foot landscape buffer. And lastly, architectural elements, they would just have to meet the masonry standards referenced above with neighborhood services. The applicant is proposing different architectural elements, including brackets, varied roof lines, overhangs, metal awnings, storefront windows, etc. All right, some just additional context of most recent comparable zoning case that came before you all. I don't believe all of you were on council at that time, but it was about a year ago along Waters Dairy and South 31st Street, so just up the road. This is the Stripes convenience store. An amended plan development district to pull down the mini storage, mini warehouse use was approved. So once again, it does have a binding site plan and enhanced landscaping at 20%. Also, other features include this 6-foot sidewalk along Waters Dairy, but roughly 200,000 square feet of square footage, roughly four times what is proposed before you tonight. And the substantial compliance to these elevations is required, and these are 3 stories, so these are climate-controlled interior access mini storage. So once again, it's just to provide some context and reminder of probably the most recent comparable case. 25 notices were mailed out per the code requirement prior to the March 2nd City Council meeting. 17 returned letters in disagreement. 2 were returned for agreement. 1 of those was from the property owner, and then 1 from another neighbor to the southwest. And then, of course, per code, notices were sent to the newspaper. And so per section 3.34 of the Unified Development Code, the opposition within that 200-foot buffer area that represents more than 20% or more of that area, property owners that oppose the project, triggers the supermajority that we already mentioned. They far exceeded the 20%, and in fact it was calculated at 47.9%, and that excludes railroad right-of-way. So per code, right-of-way is excluded. So you can see how significant that opposition is just based on that graphic. And then we sent a new mail out between the March 2nd date and this date, just to make sure that everyone was informed, also provide the new site plan, and collected new responses. And they were comparable to the ones before. Certainly fewer were sent, 17 as opposed to 24, but 9 were returned in opposition. Also, I mentioned drainage. That has been a big item of contention and concern with the neighbors, so I wanted to give you an update there. That the reduced scope drainage preliminary study, an exhibit from that is shown on the right. And basically what that confirms is that by code, they're required to make sure that stormwater runoff does not increase after the development. So they have to detain their stormwater on site. The detention pond is proposed here, but these numbers confirm that in a 100-year storm event, that the detention facilities would slow down the water to a level beyond code and also beyond the existing conditions. So existing conditions, 18.84 cubic feet per second, and proposed after the development would result in 16.24. So that's just to show you some analysis that has been done. Certainly the city engineer's office has been involved with this and has reviewed the preliminary engineering provided by the applicant's engineer, and they've confirmed that the proposed drainage plan meets or exceeds the drainage criteria and design manual requirements. Also, a culvert has been installed to address existing runoff issues at the railroad tracks, and it's actually along a private drive here. I'll show you a photo in a second. That has been a concern by some of the neighbors about an existing condition, off-site existing condition, but one that Public Works took the initiative and has fixed it. And so here you can see a site photo. This is the culvert underneath this private road. Here are the railroad tracks. And so this is looking east. And here on the aerial, you can see where that's located. Once again, off-site, but there was concern about how this project might exacerbate some existing drainage issues. Staff recommends approval for the rezoning with the following conditions. One, substantial compliance with the development and site plan, as well as substantial compliance with the landscape plans and elevations, that the remaining 3.78 acres remain zoned neighborhood services, just to confirm that, that each storage unit has a maximum of 2,000 cubic feet, which just really reinforces another section of our code, that the 6-foot sidewalk is required to be built prior to the opening of the business, and that outward-facing building facades shall be masonry. And I'll show you an exhibit. Actually, next page, you can see what those elevations would consist of. So they face 31st Street, but also south and north, and even those facing the railroad, even though presumably the buffering and screening would remain with the preservation of that 20-foot landscape buffer. Probably wouldn't be able to see that elevation, but for just good measure, those would be masonry as well. Number 7, the continuous 20-foot wide tree preservation buffer would be required. All landscaping shall meet or exceed all sections in the UDC section 7.4. Any fencing along 31st Street would be decorative metal. The plan development would run with the land and therefore would not be affected by a change in ownership. The maximum building wall height would remain at 21 feet per the elevations. And then the applicant shall comply with Texas Department of Transportation requirements. Of course, 31st Street is an on-system TxDOT roadway. And then finally, that all lighting associated with the proposal shall be shielded to prevent light trespass. And so that's all the conditions. The applicant has agreed to all of those. At the February 6th meeting for Planning and Zoning Commission, a motion was made for approval, which failed 6-2, which essentially has resulted in denial recommendation to you all, and once again is a trigger for a supermajority vote. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'll open the public hearing on item 6. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. That'll be a good continuation because you.
Right. Okay. Good evening. Tim Pastor again. Tim Pastor, 5904 Fawn Meadows Drive. Thanks again for being here and for your time. I guess Exhibit A, and we'll just work its way down real quick. Okay, so I think that A, and just work the way down. I'm not opposed to the developer putting in a nice mini storage. I think I really feel they're wanting to put in a quality construction and everything. What I have a problem with is the area that they're wanting to shove it down into. They're wanting to bring it down close to, even closer now. This is the old development plan before they revised it, but now they want to shove everything even farther into that green triangle. That green triangle is what I consider as, this would be a great opportunity again for the city to step in and turn this into a park again, because there's not very many parks in this area, and also since it's right near the railroad track, which they're planning on turning that someday into a nature trail. This would be a great place to have the park and a rest stop for that trail that'll connect all these neighborhoods and parks that it touches. So I think it's a bad idea what they want to do. I propose they just move it up a little and take in that red square area and do their development there. They have a lot more space, and I think everybody gets their way. Go ahead and do the next one. Okay, so here's Legacy Ranch.
And actually, if we could just keep it to the particular zoning about that particular property.
Okay, well, I just wanted to show you Legacy Ranch, and there's that trail again that's proposed. That'll go right up against Legacy Ranch. You see how big that development is for future homeowners. Go ahead and go to the next one. And so here's that map. It's a very large map of the parks in the area. And notice there's not any parks the south side of the proposed trail, and the red area, the red triangle is Legacy Ranch, and the green is where I propose would be a great opportunity for the city to put in a park that'll connect that other park. Go ahead and go to the next one. So the problem with some neighbors are finding, and I found when I first moved to my neighborhood, is when it rains, after about 3 days, you start getting this runoff, and you're wondering, is there a broken pipe or something? And what's happening is there's along the creek, and that's also along the abandoned railroad track, Georgia Pacific railroad track. There's a creek there. I don't think that creek is handling the water flow. And
Sure, if I can give you about 30 more seconds on that.
And so there's a retention pond farther up. It's not doing a very good job. It's supposed to serve for this giant neighborhood that's in yellow. Go to the next one. And this is what you get. You get this water seeping underneath people's foundation and their front yards, and you see how the water starts in the gutter area. That's where it's running off. Just go to the next one, and you see how it starts right there. Go to the next one. Next one, please. Okay, here you can see it kind of bubbling out of the driveway, and farther towards the back is where they're wanting to put that in that development, the mini storage, and this is going to make it worse. What's happening is water's going underneath the foundation and it's washing down the street, and a lot of neighbors worry about the runoff issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Since that happens to be my house.
Did you sign a release?
Yes.
Okay, I was just making sure.
No, that's my house. And I've been up here.
If you'd state your name and
Larry
address.
Alice, 5912 Fall Meadows.
No problem.
Okay. And I've talked a lot about the drainage issues.
Yes, sir.
And just a little background on myself. I used to run worldwide operations for Ingersoll Rand Corporation, and have been responsible for building factories and do major construction expansions on three continents. So in each case, there's always a stormwater management plan to handle when you put in hard surfaces. To me, there hasn't really been an adequate one presented here. They show a drainage area. They talk about, and this is the first time they really talked about in the presentation for the drainage retention pond, the detention pond. But what has to happen, because this is what's happening currently today, what has to happen, they have to dig a hole. There's going to have to be a hole dug in that drainage area on the plot. That happens to be behind my house, number one. And currently, when it does rain, it comes down, it drains down the property line between myself and my neighbors, and it ends up like this. And this is really is mild. My wife had the water department come out because we thought there was, this was several years ago, we thought there was a broken pipe because it was draining so bad. So anyway, you have that. And the last thing I'm going to say is I was here for the last meeting when you had the Economic Development Council, I think it is, talked about 11,000 jobs be created over the next 10 years. I came here 12 years, and the type of jobs were going to be they really focused on technical jobs, managerial jobs, high-end jobs. It doesn't do Temple any good if those people who take those jobs don't live in Temple. You don't get the property taxes, you don't get them utilizing the local stores, restaurants, if they live out of town. So if you go, and 12 years ago, I moved here from southern Pennsylvania, and I had one of those particular jobs. I ran operations for Texas Hydraulics. And when I went through that house and I stood on my back patio, the first question I asked Stillwater Homes, Robbie Johnson, I said, what can go behind me? And he said it was residential. So I said, okay, great. So now when you go and you move here and you have one of these jobs, what incentive is it for the person to buy a home if zoning can change from time to time? I mean, it really incentivizes you to go, especially with the new interstate, go to Georgetown, go to Salado. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Who else wishes to speak?
Is the owner going to make a presentation?
I don't know if he's going to make a presentation, but he might make a.
We'd like to hear what he has to say first.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, I am here, and I've been to all the meetings. Directly what I wanted to do when I was asking, I would like to ask your permission, is I would actually like to go last, because I like to be able to hear what the residents have to say and be able to at least provide perspective on our part. When we went through the P&Z meeting, on the very first hearing, the resident would speak, then I'd have to speak, then the resident would speak, and I'd have to speak, and this went on for an hour and a half. And so I just thought, out of courtesy, I would allow the residents to speak, and then I would take the final words, if you're okay with that.
I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
And if y'all, who else would like to speak?
Mayor, council members, I've got a petition, 2 petitions that I'd like to give to you. The first one is from Deerfield Estates. I'll talk about that in just a minute. And the second one is from the Creeks at Deerfield, the neighborhood directly behind us. These petitions.
And Mr. Burrows, if you would state your name and address for the record.
Tex Burrows, 6205 Turtle Creek, Deerfield Estates.
Thank you.
These petitions were taken in the neighborhoods of Deerfield Estates and the Creek of Deerfield. Deerfield Estates. There's 114 houses in Deerfield Estates, and I helped with this petition drive. And what we tried to do was get one member of each household. So the signatures, we got 80, this says 87, we got one later on that made it 88, and which represents 72.2%. I've got 76, that counts the one less. of the residents, and I was targeting 75 because you have to vote with a 75% majority, so I wanted to show you that there was at least that many. There are some that we didn't get to simply because of work schedules, and it's not that they were for. Don't take it for granted that those that didn't sign are for it. They're not. They just weren't home, and I didn't get a chance to talk to them. Although I will say there was a couple of people we talked to that due to their jobs, they wouldn't sign any petition, so there was no vote there. The petition on the creeks, there's 38 signatures, and that was just the number of people. They did their petition drive, and they're all negative there, and I don't have any other statistics on that. Okay, with that, overwhelmingly negative in these two neighborhoods. Goes along with the letter responses that you got. Planning and zoning was 6-2 against, and then this. So you do have a very overwhelming negative response from several areas. Planning and zoning, or excuse me, the zoning, neighborhood services, the city got it right. Neighborhood services is the correct zoning for this particular land because it's surrounded by neighborhoods on all sides. And neighborhood services says that there are certain things that can be allowed and certain things specifically cannot. In this case, many storage units are specifically not allowed. So since it was, I asked you not to change the zoning because it is correct for this particular property. Now, let me point out, we are not opposed to any development that would fit in the neighborhood services zoning. So whatever qualifies there, that's fine with us. The reason I made the ask if the owner's rep was going to speak is because there were some things that I would probably like to say after I hear what he talks about, and so I would request that we be given the opportunity to ask questions of him once he completes his, and that's my comments. Do you have any questions of me?
It would be fine if you'd like to come back while the public hearing's still open.
Fine. Thank you.
You bet.
Rebecca Burrow, 9914 South Whitehall Temple, and I'm not related to Tex in any way. Just want to make that clear. And while I do appreciate the representative and his civility and willingness to change things and to adapt and make his concessions, I don't think that he understands that while we are not attacking you in any way, we're not. You look fine. We will always attack the storage unit because we want nothing to do with it whatsoever. And I also don't approve of the plan to just move it up because if you remember the pictures that were taken just a little while ago, north is the only part where there's any type of wildflowers there at all. And the residents of Temple really enjoy going up there to take pictures with their family. So I just want to remind the council that Temple is the wildflower city of Texas. And what are you doing to earn that? By removing a nice native area. And native plants have a much better water retaining capacity and erosion control compared to the Bermuda. Please do not use Bermuda for me.
Ma'am, if you'll direct all of your questions and comments to the council.
There are many things listed on texasinvasives.org, but Bermuda is one of them. But the city of Temple, and particularly this area, does not have very much green space whatsoever. It is completely surrounded by things, and lot sizes really are only getting smaller. I went to a friend a couple weeks ago, and her house and backyard is smaller than my parking lot. And that's how small these things are getting. There's very little green space. And as mentioned previously, it's on this railroad where you are going to make a trail. This would be a wonderful opportunity to show how you are caring for your citizens in making this a park and a green space for all of these residents, and it would connect to all of the different parks. And Tex has gone to the Lions Club and the Temple Parks and Recreation, and they said they would be delighted to make this into a park. So you have good initiative here. It really is something that we would definitely prefer to see. And plants, especially native plants in a native park, would give a great sense of place to the residents of Temple. It would tell the citizens of Temple not only that they're in Texas, but to have pride in Texas and in Temple and being proud of being in the city. It's a reflection of state and city pride and heritage. And I also want to remind you that there is extreme citizen protest on this. Obviously, I think that's what most of us are here for. And I've been in all the meetings. It is unanimous. So just to remind the council that what an opportunity this is, and to not put in a storage unit, but to make this into a park. There would be no negatives to it. The citizens it would be beneficial in every way to them, whereas a mini storage facility kind of doesn't give the right impression, I think, to the city. And I could go on about water conservation concerns and drainage and et cetera for days, but I'll spare you. But just a plea, if this does go through, and I really, really hope it doesn't, if this does go through, please do not let him use Bermuda and invasive plants in his plan. Seriously.
Okay.
As a Native Plant Society member, that's very important.
All right. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I really don't think so. Thank you. If I could just say, and I appreciate everyone being here, we are not talking about making this a park at all tonight. This is simply dealing with the zoning of this case. It might be a wonderful idea, but if we can keep all of the comments to strictly about the zoning and drainage and whatever you'd like to, but just leave that and leave any opinions on what you would like to see there out of it, if you don't mind. And then who else would wish to, if the next person wishing to speak is welcome to come up.
Yeah, John Chookman, 2028 Deerfield Drive in Temple. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I'm a retired physical medicine and rehabilitation physician at Scott & White, and part of my interest is what can we do to keep people healthy? And for a number of years, we've talked about a hike-bike trail there, and I know that he said, don't talk about that, but I think that is pertinent.
Well, Dr. Chookman, I can't tell you no.
If we zone the land, we might very well scuttle the chance to ever have a hike-bike trail. And Texans are not getting healthier. I looked at some data, and incidence of obesity has increased from 10.7% in 1990 up to 32.4%. We have more obese children, about 17%. They have higher incidence of liver disease. There's more diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, arthritis. And looking at what people can do to stay healthy is, obviously diet and appropriate use of medication, but getting regular exercise is a vital thing to having a healthy lifestyle. And there's a whole page of benefits of regular exercise, and exercise is one of our best medications. If we can get people to exercise and keep active, we'll avoid a lot of health care costs and disability. People sometimes don't exercise. They say, man, the roads are busy, the intersections are dangerous, there's no safe sidewalks or shoulders. In our country, bicyclists and pedestrians are at higher risk of getting killed and injured than in Europe and other places. And the Killeen Temple Metropolitan Planning Group said 815 cyclists were killed in 2015, and 5,350 pedestrians, because sometimes we just don't have safe places to go.
Dr. Shookman, may I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
What's your opinion on the zoning?
Well, I think if we zone, if we look at this thing, I think this piece of land would be a great place for a trailhead, because if we have the trail that goes down this railroad, we want it to attract people, not just people in the neighborhood, but people. That's why I brought this, because there are all these new neighborhoods, and not everybody can just ride their bikes down Highway 93 and 31st Street. They might need to have a place to park, and if there's no place to park, we may put in a trail that has nobody who can use it, which would be a terrible waste. I think this trail, if we put it in, when you look at all the neighborhoods that will be a living, be right along it, this is liable to be the most highly used trail in town that people live on. If you go to the Pepper Creek Trail and look at the new extension, it just goes through farmland. There's nobody that lives there, but people already live around here, and I think this could be a tremendous way to enhance health, exercise, and quality of life for citizens in Temple. I have just two things. I said, this is an opportunity, we can take it or forever miss it. And I think if we allow something to change the zoning away from neighborhood services, we might very well miss it. And what can we do the most good for the most people? I think for the most people in Temple, if we can provide a good exercise place close to where they live, convenient for them, they're going to use it widely, and people are going to be healthier and benefit from it. So I would encourage you not to change the zoning and actually work with Parks and Recreation. I've talked to the Temple, Keep Temple Beautiful Committee, and the lady there said, oh yeah, we'd be happy to work with you. The Lions Club is interested in perhaps working with this. So I think kind of looking at different uses for this land. We're not talking about taking the land away from the owner, but looking at, is he interested in an alternative that would allow parking there for people who use the trail? They'll bring their kids, they need a bathroom, kids got to go to the bathroom, they need water. And can that fit in? The way this thing has been jammed down into the corner, that kind of takes away what would be the access to the trail. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Doc.
I appreciate your willingness to hear me out on that.
Absolutely. Anyone else wishing to speak? And if I asked for please no park talk, will you? Okay, thanks for that. I'm just the mayor, so nobody ever actually listens to me, so I'd appreciate it.
Addressing the issue before the council. My name is John Schonefeld. I live at 5924 Fawn Meadows Drive. My home backs directly to it. Mr. Jones and I tend to disagree on the product for that particular space, but I do want to speak in favor of the PD because it is our opportunity as residents of that area to have input into such issues as drainage and so on. Deerfield and the creeks at Deerfield get flooding because we're in a valley. Water runs downhill. That's the way it works naturally. We get that water because when Deerfield and the creeks were developed, the issue of the drainage from the high ground in terms of getting it to go somewhere else was never addressed by the developer of Deerfield nor the creeks. And obviously the railroad tracks have not been maintained. That's porous. When you get heavy rains for a period of 4 or 5 days, then yes, it's going to drain through the individual yards. It doesn't necessarily every yard, but it depends on what's the condition behind the property line of the property owner that either dictates whether water comes through the yard, because mine does not drain from there. My neighbor's does, but I've got a bit of a berm behind my property. My preference is for the PD because A, we have all of these accidents, including a double fatality there by Tuscan Square. And the other day there was a T-bone. There have been multiple T-bones as the population increases and the traffic increases on 31st Street, anything that mitigates that traffic increase or usage of 31st, I have to speak in favor of. We're talking by the city's admission, 0.36 traffic or access to it for
0.26, but you're close.
As opposed to another Dollar General, which could go into the neighborhood services, and all of that traffic in and out of there, a restaurant that could have outdoor seating, bands, and all of that sort of stuff. This is about as benign of a project as we could possibly have right there in terms of its impact. Do I want to see it? No, but my yard goes up. All of our yards along that railroad track slope up. We've got 6-foot stockade fence, and with the exception of Mr. Ellis, none of us can stand on our patio and look over that stockade fence and see the top of these buildings. Do we know they're there? Yes. But I think the PD and the efforts that Mr. Jones has made to accommodate us, the water on that property is his problem to manage that water. The water that's not on that property that comes through our properties is not his issue, and he's, in my opinion, done an excellent job of trying to address it, to mitigate it as far as possible. But he doesn't own the problems that exist in a valley that's downstream from that existing property. So I would encourage your supermajority. I know I'm upsetting my neighbors. I apologize. But my preference is for something that's innocuous as it can be. Like I said, we disagree on the product to an extent, but its impact, I think, is negligible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I didn't sign up to speak, but could I ask a question?
Actually, you can go up to speak after this gentleman speaks.
Joe Robb, 5808 Turtle Creek Trail. I just want to take a minute to thank the City of Temple. After 12 years, they finally fixed the culvert due to special interest groups, not the people. If you calculate there are 20 houses that look there. You have collected $10,000 a year for each house. That's over $2 million in those 10 years. So I say, why have we complained so many years to get that water problem fixed? A special interest group comes and you fix it. I mean, I think we should have gotten a little bit more from those $2 million we paid you. Now, the other thing is, I have to agree with most of my neighbors. Since we're talking about a development, I like to see the City of Temple stand up for being the state capital of wildflowers. Okay, and that is even less invasive than the gentleman was saying just before me. That's my argument. People from all over come and walk, take pictures of their family in the bluebonnets. We can even work harder with the Lady Bird Center in Austin and get other types of wildflowers. I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm offering an alternative that's less invasive. But I wish to thank the City of Temple for finally fixing that after 12 years.
I'm Sheila Joyner from 2207 Misty Morning Lane in Deerfield. My question is, with the number of storage facilities that surround that particular piece of land, has anybody checked on the occupancy rate in those facilities? And probably I'm the only person in the room that has any real experience with storage facilities, because I worked in one in Allen, Texas. And there, even if the ground is all flat, there's still some critter problems. These sort of facilities attract vermin, rats, more so than the open area is. And if you And somebody was saying the other day that once there was some development in an area, there are more rattlesnakes, because once you put in the concrete, you're forcing the animals to somewhere that there isn't concrete, and you're going to get more of that into the neighborhood. And I think if we're going to have neighborhoods where we're going to have children and we want people to live in Temple, I think we need to think about what we're doing to those neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Came in late, I'll call it.
No, you're okay.
Jerry Heisler, I live at 6111 Woody Creek Cove in Temple. These city council meetings are not as entertaining as they used to be, Mayor Dunn. But
Sorry.
a couple of observations. Talked to several of my neighbors. I signed one of the petitions. I think there's been a lot of good information shared today, enlightening information from my point of view. I think this is something that we have to consider for that area. We know that that property is valuable. If you look at the tax records and the appraisal values. So whoever owns that property is not going to give it up for a park, I don't think, unless the city wants to buy it, which would be great from my point of view. That area has all kinds of zoning, and we see all kind of development that is bringing lots and lots of traffic into that area. That is probably something else that our neighborhood will want to discuss with you at some point, because the traffic there is going to be very intense with the development across the street. So traffic, noise, congestion, those are all things that we should be concerned about. I think you also know that we're a development that are very vocal, and we don't mind coming and sharing our opinions, and I think that's a good thing. So whether this is approved or disapproved, or whether we come before you another time when something else is proposed, I think you will hear from this group of people over and over and over again in terms of the use. Here's some concerns. I was the first house in the creeks of Deerfield Estates. There's always been a drainage issue in Deerfield Estates. I'm not an engineer. My two sons are. Thank goodness they became good citizens and are contributing to our economy. I'm a social worker, so I don't know much about drainage. But there's been all kinds of drainage issues. I feel for the gentleman that was talking about the stuff coming through his yard and talking about the street drainage. That's been there constantly the whole time that we've been in the neighborhood. The developer and builder messaging, as Mr. Keeler sold lots to other builders, the messaging about what the zoning was and what the covenant was and all these kind of things got lost somewhere. And so there's been a lot of confusion and misinformation often about the development that you were really moving into, which is a shame. That's not your job. I think that's the builder and developer's jobs. And then, of course, I'm downstream from where this would be really happening. So it impacts me in only a minimal way, but I feel very concerned about the people that are right adjacent to the railroad because it is going to impact their quality of life. I do like one suggestion that I heard, I think, where the latest proposal for this development is, if you move it back, I think you would appease a lot of hard feelings about this. I don't know what that entails and what the costs are or anything like that, but if there was a bigger buffer, I think that would be fine. The other interesting thing I always find out is that everybody's talking about the wildflowers. As far as I know, this is privately owned land. So I'm not sure if we are even supposed to be over there taking pictures and parking cars on that lot. But that's another issue. And I appreciate the city planner's conversation about traffic. I think that would be my biggest concern as a citizen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Heisler. I'll try to make it more entertaining next time. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Pat Langen, 2018 Friars Grove Drive. This is my first city council meeting, and you really have uncomfortable seats, I got to tell you. You know, it's interesting to watch the different projects you're discussing and how they, you know, all the process they go through and all that. Never know anything about it. But it's kind of frightening at the same time to see how easily plots of land get gobbled up and paved over, and it, you know, pavement is the best herbicide there is. So I think the city, you know, whoever the zoning commission, or planning commission, whoever decided that, you know, you shouldn't have buildings in there like storage units, they knew what they're doing. They're the professionals, and I think we should listen to their judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, you've got to listen to everything that I've been listening to for months. It's been a little bit of an exercise, I'll tell you that. We, first and foremost, I want to give thanks to the staff member. Oh, Donald Jones, 4216 Little Bend Court, Fort Worth, Texas.
Thank you.
My background, 24 years of self-storage experience. I know I may not look that old, but I've had that much experience. I literally work all over the country working on self-storage projects, whether through management, through development, through acquisition, through disposition. And so I do a lot. I understand and I know my business because I've been involved in it for a very long time. I appreciate and have said vocally several times how I appreciate the input provided by the residents here. But I really appreciate the staff and the great work that they do. I can't imagine how hard they work, not only presenting my project in favor or against, it's irrelevant, but they give fair reference as I've watched this time and time again, not only to our project, but all the projects throughout Temple, and I think you guys are very fortunate to have that. In this particular case, we have residents who have a great deal of concerns, and I've listened to those concerns. That was from the very first P&Z meeting I came to and was really shocked at how much concern there was. And so I listened to those concerns, and the P&Z tabled that meeting and asked me to have a residential meeting. So right here, we met with the residents for 2 straight hours, a little bit plus. And we tried to answer all those concerns. And then we had another P&Z meeting where we listened to all of this again. And once again, I tried to address the concerns. And then we came to the city council meeting where the meeting was tabled and for today's discussion. The concerns have all been the same. They haven't changed. The only thing that's changed is our presentation each time we come. Each time we come, we either lower a roof line, provide more landscaping, reduce the size of the project, offer up amenities. And we do that time and time again to just simply listen to the same concerns. And I appreciate the concerns. As a developer, if I wanted to do, as mentioned by Mr. Shannerfeld, a Dollar General, I could pave as much as I wanted to pave, and I could put a building that had very little landscaping. I could have as much traffic on the road as I felt like in compliance with the DOT regulations. I could do a lot of things. If I was a neighborhood services, I could build a big restaurant that would accommodate everybody, but would bring with it all of the problems. One comment that was made by our friend who was a self-storage operator in Allen, obviously I live in Keller. I know Allen very well. It's a very affluent area. Tons of people are moving to Allen, just like you want tons of people to move to Temple. You would like to be the Mecca of this particular area. I don't think that you want to dissuade people from coming. I think you want to encourage people to come. The question on occupancy is very simple. The big red barn that's down to the south and to the west of us, totally full when we started this project. Now, because they're in the county, they're actually expanding. If you just look at it, they have a huge expansion going on because they know that there's a need. So the big red barn was totally full. The project to the north and to the east of us, 98% occupied when we started this project. The 2 facilities that are adjacent to the project you guys approved back on Dairyfield totally full, 100% occupied. Those are not mythical numbers, they're facts. What residents don't understand is even though they're opposed to this particular project, they use storage. They use it all the time. That's why I'm here. Is because as the approval comes through the city council to build new neighborhoods, which is fabulous. Neighborhoods are great, right? Because we get new tax dollars, new people to shop and dine and use our services. It's fabulous. So just to the south of us, brand new neighborhood approved. When I came to the last, not to the city council meeting, but to the P&Z meeting, there were 3 neighborhoods approved in that meeting just to the south of this particular project. What do you think those residents need? Yes, they need neighborhood services. I agree, 100%. But just as you've mentioned, Mr. Mayor, unless a philanthropist wants to come in and buy that land, it's not going to be a park. Unless the HOA wants to put in all of the money, it's not going to be a park. Unless the city of Temple wants to put in the money, it's not going to be a park. So what have we done to try to accommodate the neighbors? Well, but first and foremost, we ended up with a 2-phase plan. Build phase 1, and then come in later and build phase 2. There was so much dismay in what we were building. Remember what, you guys don't know this, but everybody was complaining that we had phase 2. All the water runoff would go down to the bottom of phase 2 and would flood their houses, would create problems. They didn't want to get rid of all the natural vegetation, etc. There was an uproar about phase 2. And what did we do? Removed it. We took it away. So that way you could have the whole thing, but now today everybody wants me to move phase 1 up to a different part of the property. The reason we have phase 1 in the bottom corner of that property is because it's a triangle. Talk to any developer. If we have any here, fantastic. Please speak on your behalf or mine. Developers do not like to build in a triangle. It's extremely difficult. So we have the opportunity to take advantage of a more difficult geographic or metric and build something that works. Where we left the prime piece of real estate as a square in the northwest corner that any neighborhood service could come in and appreciate. We left it there on purpose so somebody else could use it and bring in the neighborhood services. I can't and won't control what people do in the future, but I can tell you this, that if this particular application is denied, it's okay. The great thing about politics and about cities and about our opportunities to vote and all these other things is we actually put people into place to help make decisions for us. Your opportunity today is to help make a decision as to what you think is best, not just for this neighborhood, but for the city of Temple. And I think it's fabulous. I'm certain you guys do a great job all the time. The people behind me get paid every single day to look at every single aspect of the city of Temple to try to help present to you things that they think are favorable. Staff has approved this or has recommended this for approval. So as you try to look at and decide what it is you do, it's totally okay with me if you turn this down. It'll cost my investor about $100,000. It'll cost the person who's trying to sell this property another 3 or 4 or 5 years. This property's been for sale for forever. At any point in time, the HOA could have said, we sure do want this for a park. We better get together and do it. No, not until a developer comes in and actually puts together a plan that it gets people's attention. So, from this pulpit, I would tell you, the whole north section of that property is available. Buy it. We'll sell it to you at cost. No big deal to us. HOA, City of Temple, philanthropist, doesn't matter. We'll just sell it at cost. But we're looking at building a self-storage project. I'm not a philanthropist. I'm not a botanist. I'm just simply a developer. And I understand my project well, and we have taken every single critique of our project and have addressed it. So beyond that, I don't know what else we can do. Somebody's going to leave here disappointed. Might be me, might be the residents. You can't make everybody happy. I understand that. But I swear that my developer and myself have done everything we can to try to comply with the City of Temple You saw that through the presentation from the staff, but I can't make the residents happy. That's not my job. Thank you.
Burrows, did you want to say anything?
I had a couple of questions.
You'll need to go back up to the podium.
Tex Burrows.
Yes, sir. You're good.
This is 205 Turtle Creek. A couple of questions came up. Don, I'm going to direct these to you.
Actually, you have to
sorry,
direct them to
sorry.
the council, but
There's-
he can answer
When
those
the,
afterwards.
The artist rendition of what it would look like was shown. It was from a corner, and I couldn't really get to see what much of the front would look like. But looking at the plans, there's some what's called accent metal panels, and I'm not sure what that meant. Can you explain that? Accent metal panels?
If you'll sit down and let Mr. Jones answer that.
One of the negative aspects, again, with all my experience in storage, I know that people hate storage. I get it. It's not a real favorite thing, but most of the time that's because storages are not pretty. And that's okay. Storage can be pretty. The problem is that we've already taken away the entire view of the property. So nobody can even see it self-storage other than the fact that I have a name that says storage. So the metal architectural features help to give a rendering or a likeness of a storage door. It helps me for advertising as necessary. If those panels go away, I'm walking. I can't do anything more to this particular project, and I need those panels to help to communicate that this is a storage facility. Where other operators, and I won't say their name, have garish orange, you might know of some of those, or maybe ugly yellow or some of those other things. We just put blue on here because I think it looks better. And so anyway, they are storage doors. They can't open, they can't close, you can't move them, you can't do anything. They just simply give an appearance of a storage door.
Thank you, Don. Comment was made about fencing, decorative metal, if fencing is put in the front. There's no fencing shown here. Is fencing going to be put up?
Mr. Chandler, do you know that? Or
I'll try to answer it, and Donald can correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. So this shows a small fence on, or let's go to the current, but same phase. See this little section here along 31st Street? You've got that big old tree, I think, is right here in the right-of-way, and then there would be a small section of fence here connecting to the Georgetown Railroad property.
Oh, okay. I understand that. I got the idea that there would be something along the total front of it, so that's fine. That's good. I would make one request. If this property is approved for this project, that the city work with the developer and with the water runoff planned, because once the water leaves the property, it's not the developer or the property owner's responsibility, it's the city's. And putting that culvert in is going to help somewhat, but I don't believe that's going to be adequate for the total runoff. I know there's a formula for square footage under roof and asphalt and concrete, but as Rebecca Burrow pointed out, the landscaping will not absorb runoff at the same rate as natural vegetation, and it's a significant difference. So when you add that in, you're going to have more runoff from whatever the development is, and so the city needs to deal with that issue before the thing is completed. That's just my request.
Yes, sir.
Since my property is impacted by this water, probably more than one.
Do you mind? Do you mind?
1 minute?
Oh yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. If you'll just go back up to the podium.
I just wanted to say that, do I need to state my name again?
No, you're already
Okay,
on
I just
the
want to
record.
say I take exception to the one comment saying that all these concerns have been addressed. The concerns on the stormwater management plan has not been addressed. I asked from the first meeting that we had here, I said, what was the design of the detention pond going to be? I've heard nothing. Basically, and they talk about rates, and rates is the right rate on the water flow is correct. But rate also determines volume. And just to give you an idea, under the new plan, under the old plan, every inch of rainfall was 130,000 gallons of water that would be runoff. Now, now you have to take into consideration rate, and I agree with them on that. Under the new plan, and I didn't have much to work with to come up with the calculations, but it's going to be probably around 90,000 gallons for every inch of rain. Last week we had over 3 inches of rain. So that's 270,000 gallons. A 4-foot deep, 20 feet diameter swimming pool has about 24,000 gallons in it. So that was like 10 swimming pools of water that's going to go into this drainage area. That's why I say there has to be, under the current scenario, without any hard surface, we get drainage down onto Fawn Meadows Drive. So there's no way that you can have a drainage area without them digging a hole of some construction of which we have no idea. I think the engineer, when I asked him about it, basically said, just trust us, I'm such a good engineer that we'll take care of it. Well, the problem with the gentleman here and the engineer is they don't live here. They don't live there. They're going to come in, do the development, and then they're going to walk away and do something else. And then we're going to have to live with it the rest of our lives. And that hole is going to be right behind my fence and the fence of my neighbors. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. No parks, remember?
No, there's nothing to do with parks. It's okay. I'll spare you. Rebecca Burrow. I just want to make two little statements real quick. That the land hasn't sold in the past because the guy was trying to sell it for twice its value. And, of course, no one's really going to do that. And secondly, I just forgot what I was going to say. Yeah. Well, what was I going to say, Dex? I completely forgot. Oh, I'll come back when I remember.
Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, I'm going to declare the pub. Yes, sir.
1 minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And I won't talk about parks either. Tim Pastor again. Traffic, when they were discussing traffic rate, keep in mind that the Legacy Ranch that's going in, all along 31st Street is general retail. Not planned development, not planned general retail, but strictly.
Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it actually is a planned development general retail. So since that's, I just want to clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's going to be general retail planned development, but that's going to add a lot of traffic in this area that really shouldn't be handling that much traffic with the neighborhoods all around. What we're worried about also, not just a drainage issue and the park issue, but also traffic. We don't want it to look like the north side of 31st Street near the Loop. We're trying to stay away from that, and that's why we moved down here. That's why a lot of people move down here. So keep that in mind, that consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is it really vital?
Yes.
Okay, then please.
I just can't believe I forgot it because I was concerned about the other things. That I take his point about how someone wouldn't just come in and be a philanthropist and buy the land. But if the owner decides to give even a portion of this to the city as a charitable trust contribution, you would get an only slightly, extremely large tax break on that. He would not be losing anything on deciding to do that. You'd have to go to him, though, and see about that. But you could get that land for other uses.
Okay, that actually had nothing to do with what we were talking about. But
To non-rezone
At this time, I'm going to go ahead and declare the public hearing closed because I think we are fading very quickly. I'd like to say a few things before I turn it over to the council for any discussion. Mr. Jones, quite frankly, I think this is a good project, and I think you have worked probably more than you should have in trying to appease the neighborhood, and I applaud you for that. To say something about a comment that you made, I cannot truly say that in that location it completely benefits the city of Temple as much as you might claim that it does. To the folks of Deerfield, I do appreciate the fact that there has been such concern and there has been such effort in squashing this, and it does mean a lot when we have citizen involvement. That's why we're here. And you know, we have all voted on things before that even when there has been citizen involvement, if in our hearts and minds, if it truly benefited the city of Temple in some way, we have voted that way in the past, and I don't know how anybody else is going to vote. I'm not inclined to vote for this project, but as I told Mr. Burrows, that somebody I've known since I was 3 years old, the other day, I said, be careful what you wish for, because there is neighborhood service zoning. There could be more traffic with this. To your point, by not wanting this there, this automatically creates the possibility for greater traffic that we will have to deal with. But I do appreciate the community's the community reaching out to us and having such a vocal role in this. We don't know what the future of that land holds. That's not what we're doing here tonight, other than voting on the specific matter at hand. But again, Mr. Jones, I appreciate you being here, regardless of how this turns out. And to the folks of Deerfield and in the creeks of Deerfield, thank you for your involvement. And I'll turn it to the council.
I'd also like to state that I think, Mr. Jones, you have been over backwards. You have done an awful lot to appease the concerns that came up, and I guess you're relentless in pursuing it still, even after all the opposition and everything, and so can appreciate that. Also echo what Mayor Dunn says. If this is not approved, somebody could come in with the existing zoning and do something that's really more objectionable than what is being proposed here. It would still be neighborhood services, and there would still be drainage issues that need to be addressed. But I also do hear the neighbors and the people around it, and I think I would side with your views and perspective on that, and we'll see how it comes out.
I would just like to say, yes, thank you for your interest in staying involved in the community. That's what it takes. That's what we're all about, to look at what's important to our citizens and our neighborhoods. And yes, it's very important that we support also businesses and entrepreneurs that want to provide services in our community. So this is a very interesting situation, and I just hope that whatever is decided will make us continue to be involved and stay concerned about our neighborhoods and our host city.
I just say I work very hard on every case that comes before us. I try to look at it beforehand and study it. I also try very hard not to make up my mind till I've heard what people say here. And I do appreciate everyone coming out. This is a pretty hard one. I agree with what several of the others have said here. We don't know what else could come here that can already fit in the current zoning. that's a little spooky. I also hear a lot of citizens, in fact, a way overwhelming majority, say they don't want it, so I have to factor that in too. It's a hard decision here.
Same thing everybody else has said. I mean, I appreciate citizen involvement. That's part of our democracy, is to be able to control what goes into your neighborhood. I appreciate that. But and as a council, we have to both be concerned about individual neighborhoods, but also the five of us together are the city of Temple, not District 2 or District 3 exclusively. So, Mr. Jones, I appreciate your efforts. You have been over backwards. I don't know in my 4 years sitting on the council if I've ever had someone want to come in and do business in the city of Temple, and put forth the effort that you have. I don't know that we've ever had 2 citizens meetings. I don't know that we've ever had this kind of work on planning and zoning, and you've scaled your project back. You bought the whole piece of land, or you're willing to buy the whole piece of land to do half the project. A lot of people would say that's bad business, but you've made efforts. You've met our landscaping requirements. You're leaving the buffer on the back of the property to not impede on the neighbors, and we talk about having to trust the engineers. Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to trust our engineers. We're going to trust the City of Temple Planning Department, and we're going to trust the City of Temple engineers as far as assuming that it passes. We're going to trust them to also make the right decision. But again, lots of work on this from everybody, from the citizens and the applicant. So this is democracy at work, and that's why we vote up or down, right? So thank y'all so much for everybody. Thank you for your efforts.
If I could just, before I call for a vote, I'll just remind everybody that by this staying in neighborhood services, the way that it is, if this were not to go through, the landscape requirements would be much less, and there would also be other things that you would not have the amenities of in this particular proposal. However, it wouldn't be a storage building. So I'm just saying that, so someday if there's ever a question, you'll just know that we covered all the bases if this were not to pass. And on that note, I will entertain a motion on item 6.
Motion to deny.
Second.
Okay. A motion and a second. Madam Secretary.
Mayor Pro Tem Cloud?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
No.
Councilmember Pilkington?
Aye.
Councilmember Morales? Mayor Dunn?
Aye. The proposal fails. Thank you all for staying here with us, and before everybody gets up, if I can just take a couple more minutes to talk about something much more bittersweet. This evening is our city manager Jonathan Graham's last meeting. He's retiring shortly, and for 20 years almost 20 years, you have been one of my dearest friends, and first as city attorney and then as city manager. And for me personally, I would not be in municipal government had it not been for your mentorship and your friendship. And I remembered something, because you brought this up to me the other day. When I said I was going to run for city council, you said, how is this going to change our friendship, or how is this going to change our relationship? And it did change our relationship. And from my perspective, because I've been thinking about this a lot, it changed it changed our relationship because I would not have had the opportunity to know how wonderful it was to work with someone like you. And you are the epitome of an honorable person, and I am so thankful to call you a friend. And you have loved and been compassionate in this city to everybody, and they know that. And as a city manager, you have not looked at the population as a statistic, but you've looked at them each individually. And so in a city of good people, you are the best one. And now I hope we can start going to breakfast again and stuff. And I'll let the council say anything, and obviously I kept the crowd for a reason, but would anybody else like to say anything right now?
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you for your work with the city and also our individual friendship. It means a lot to me.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. We've come a long way as a city since you first arrived here, and I know you've had a big part of that, and I appreciate it.
It's been even longer that I've known Jonathan, and so I'm going to keep him involved, but we are going to miss you here, and just want to thank you. Thank you and Jennifer about our citizens and our city and just wanting the best for everyone, and that's what I've seen you do every day, so thank you.
Well, been a little choked up really since Renee, and I'm sorry she's gone because she did such a nice prayer at the beginning, and I was glad that I didn't have to do a presentation because that kind of choked me up. But I do want to thank the council, the staff, so many great folks I've worked with over the years, the public, for this opportunity. It's really been amazing, and I'm just deeply indebted to all of you for this chance and this opportunity to serve the community that's really coming out of school. All I really wanted to do was work in government. So I do thank you, and I know we've got something next week, and I'll save some remarks. I just say the last couple weeks, it's good that you only do this one time usually because it's tough. Honestly, it feels a little bit, I've been here 28 years, so this last 3 weeks have felt a little bit like being a senior in high school again, a little frisky. My wife's been out of town a little, unfortunately she was out of town, but a little frisky, and, a little bit of a temptation every day to skip, and do something crazy, but knowing that there's a final exam at the end and maybe I better stay. So I just thank you all for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you for your attendance.